Good morning, everyone. I'm going to wait another minute or two, and then we'll get started. Okay, I have 11 o'clock, so I'm going to go ahead and start. So good morning and welcome to the International Underground Railroad Month webinar. This webinar is being recorded, and we will make a video of the webinar available later. If you need captions, you can access live captions by going to video settings, which is in the bottom right corner of your screen, and select live caption and subtitles on. You may need to select English as the language to get it to start. The caption should show scrolling across the bottom of the screen. So thank you for joining us this morning. The National Park Service National Underground Railroad Network to Freedom is pleased to facilitate this collaborative grassroots project to brand September as International Underground Railroad Month. The Network to Freedom is a program within the National Park Service that commemorates, preserves, and interprets the resistance to slavery through escape and flight. The program is a catalyst for innovation, partnerships, and scholarship that connects and shares the diverse legacy of the Underground Railroad across boundaries and generations. The program consists of sites with a verifiable connection to the Underground Railroad, educational and interpretive programs, and research facilities. I know that my colleagues in the Network to Freedom are listening to the discussion this morning. We have regional coordinators, Deonda Johnson and Sherry Jackson, and a visual information specialist, Amanda Pollock, and a GIS intern, Kate Stafford. For more information about the Network to Freedom program, you can visit our website at nps.gov/UGRR. So International Underground Railroad Month began with Maryland, whose Governor Hogan declared September 2019 as the first such month. At a training workshop in Niagara Falls, Marcy Ross from the Maryland Office of Tourism challenged other states to join future efforts. Today, I'm joined by Heather Ersts, Partnership and Outreach Manager for the Maryland Office of Tourism, and Roy Finkenbine, Professor of History and Director of the Black Abolitionist Archives at the University of Detroit, Mercy. Roy is also a member of the Michigan Freedom Trails Commission. They will make the presentation. If you have questions or comments, you can submit them through the chat box, and I will moderate a question and answer discussion following the presentation. So now I'm going to try to turn this over to Heather.
Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. My name is Heather Ersts, and I am the Partnership and Outreach Manager for the Maryland Office of Tourism. And if Diane could go to the next slide, we will start with what is International Underground Railroad Month. There we go. Yay! We are all learning this new technology. We don't even tell you how many hours we've spent trying to get this going and making sure we've got this. So bear with us. So what is International Underground Railroad Month? This, as Diane said, started in 2019, and how we are defining it is that International Underground Railroad Month acknowledges the significance of the Underground Railroad and all those involved for its contribution to the eradication of slavery in the United States, and is a cornerstone for the more comprehensive civil rights movement that followed. It honors the inspiring efforts of the people from around the world who have committed themselves to document, interpret, and share with the public the Underground Railroad through the National Park Service's National Underground Railroad Network to Freedom. So that is our kind of broad definition of what is International Underground Railroad Month. And next slide. So this really started, it did start last year in 2019 with Governor Larry Hogan proclaiming September as International Underground Railroad Month. This is one of those efforts and things that just was an idea that was sparked and said, let's try it. And everyone was in full support of it. The reason Maryland picked September for International Underground Railroad Month is that both Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman, who are Marylanders, both self-emancipated in Maryland, or from Maryland in September. So that was a reasoning for our picking that month. And last year was the 170th of Harriet Tubman's self-emancipation. So thus we had a good push behind it to push this forward and have this proclaimed. Next slide, please. And that's the official proclamation. And then really, I have to thank Roy for this year we had been planning to do International Underground Railroad Month again in 2020. But Roy was great with the Michigan Freedom Trail Commission of contacting both Diane and myself and getting us going with the bigger effort this year, saying, hey, the call was put out at the Network to Freedom training in September in Niagara of expanding this, and let's do it. So the three of us, Maryland, Network to Freedom, and Michigan have been working together for the last couple months to pull this together and be ready to launch this in a much bigger way, and are super excited. Next slide. So the goals for International Underground Railroad Month for 2020. Our main goal is to inspire the public to travel to Underground Railroad sites, to learn the history associated with those individual sites and experience the mosaic of community, regional, and national stories of the Underground Railroad. With, as we are in the middle of a pandemic, in many ways, this is we have a benefit this year of the Network to Freedom sites being wonderful sites to travel to because they are essentially a necklace of sites. You can move from one to the next. Unfortunately, I think for most of our sites, if they have an inside interpretation, most of them are closed, and I'm going to assume we are actually assuming that most of those interior interpretive experiences will still be closed in September. So we're really looking for those outside experiences, which many of our sites have, whether it's just an interpretive signage, whether it's a place-based experience. So and as we know from the travel research right now, we know that road trips are the #1 way people are traveling and plan to travel in the next couple of months. So one of our goals with this is to inspire those road trips to Network to Freedom sites. We want to make this a yearly event. Let's, banding together, whether it's an official event proclaimed by our governors or not. There's no reason that this grassroots movement cannot move forward and make this a yearly event. Number-wise, as Diane said, Marcy had put out numbers at the training of initially her numbers were 15 states and 3 Canadian locations to participate, and we decided to put that in half for this year of 7 states and 1 Canadian a location to participate, and then to grow that to 15 states and 3. However, with the incredible response we've had to this webinar, we may well meet our goal of 2021 this year, and certainly hope to see that happen. Next slide, please. Diane, get the next slide for me.
I've got it.
There you go. Perfect. All right. Thanks, Roy. Your turn.
Hi, Roy Finkenbine again from the Michigan Freedom Trail Commission. And there's a number of ways you can participate. Obviously, a primary goal is to get a designation from your state. But as Heather said, you can move forward certainly without and until that's done. One of the reasons for this webinar is to bring people together, to help them to network. And I know Diane's going to try to follow up as much as possible in allowing for some of those linkages. A key way to participate is to work with partners and sites in your state to seek a proclamation from your state's governor to designate September 2020 as International Underground Railroad Month. And to do that, we need to recognize every state's in a different situation. In Michigan here, we actually have a government entity, the Michigan Freedom Trail Commission. States don't generally have that, so we're actually part of the Michigan state government moving in this direction. In many states, it's a quasi-public entity, it's a private organization or a society. There are regional ones like the Ohio River National Freedom Corridor. There are regional ones within, which is multi-state. There are regional ones within states like the North Country Association in upstate New York. Local groups like the Cass County Underground Railroad Historical Society, but then a lot of interested parties, whether it be local historical societies, African American museums, a whole range of entities, and particularly the NTF sites themselves that can partner together to move in this direction. So I think look at the scope of what your state has, network people together, and go for a proclamation as a step. One of the things that we talked about in Diane and Heather and I is, in addition to the historical part of this, there's a real tourism element. As Heather hinted at, COVID has dealt us a blow, but we can make lemons into lemonade in the sense that people will be looking for those day trip opportunities. And this is a perfect, even before COVID goes away, in Michigan, for example, a lot of our sites are exterior only. To put together a day trip where one can proceed around in a region of the state and visit a lot of these sites and learn some of the history from markers and from guidebooks and other things. Certainly to develop programs, either on-site or virtually, to promote and commemorate the Underground Railroad. I'll tell you what we're doing here in Michigan. Several years ago, we started something called the Michigan Underground Railroad Heritage Gathering, which is a one-day conference for anybody who's interested to come together. In the first 2 years, this was an on-site conference in Lansing. This year, we understood fairly early on that was not going to be possible because of COVID. So we're going to a virtual conference that breaks all the sessions and workshops out across the month of September, and they'll be available online. At least one of these will be live. Where do we go from here for people across the state to participate? So there's a lot of ways you could do that. If you've got a local or a state or regional Underground Railroad program that you have scheduled and it goes virtual, you'll reach a larger audience, and I think that may benefit us as well. Identifying a network of freedom members that are open to the public, sites that have made it on the NTF network and would like to participate in their passport program. Like the National Park Service does, there's the opportunity for sites to become involved in this and for citizens to go around, visit these sites, and get an NTF passport stamped. It's interesting for a whole range of ages, particularly a way, I think, to get young people involved, and it gets you some recognition for learning about this this phenomenal historical experience that is the Underground Railroad. If you're interested in being a passport site, you can contact Sherry Jackson at nps.gov. She's the Southeastern Regional Coordinator, as I believe her title, for the NTF. Next slide. Okay. Maryland has really been a leader, and along with Delaware and some other places in your region, I think, in using social media to promote the Underground Railroad story. And we have an opportunity to do that for promoting this, it through this guise of International Underground Railroad Month. There'll be a hashtag coming for that soon from the Network to Freedom, but also you can use the hashtag for your state tourism office and working with them to build in that way. I think I've been a longtime instructor of African American history at the university level, and I recognize that there are problems and there are benefits to, for instance, having Black History Month. You might raise the question of, well, why concentrate this all in a month? I will tell you, it focuses people's attention, and maybe more importantly, it focuses the media's attention to these stories. And so there's an overwhelming net benefit in terms of getting the public focused on the story if it's in a month. And in fact, we moved our gathering, which is now going to be virtual, had been in October until this year. We moved it to September to get people to start thinking about September as Underground Railroad Month. And I think we'll see a payoff for that. Identify and share with NTF program, web-based content, video, virtual tours, etc., through a lot of venues that explore Underground Railroad content in your state or region to be included on the NTF website. There's a lot of places these can come from. I know the Network to Freedom and National Park Service have sponsored some, 2-3 day trainings, and people have done things Underground Railroad related at that level. We did it last year in conjunction with our gathering. People do it through their State History Day, young people, videos that are valuable. Some people just do and post things, on their phone, kind of on their own initiative, but local organizations have done this. I think there's a variety of ways, and there's an effort here to include access to this on the NTF website. So if, as you build this part of your programming, certainly we'd urge you to make the NTF aware of that, and you can contact the brand new NTF tech person, Amanda_Pollock at nps.gov, and I'll give a plug for her and her latest venture, which is on July 4th. There's a group of more than 75 people, and Amanda has edited this, and she'll be releasing a online reading of Frederick Douglass's What to the Slave is the 4th of July, which is a wonderful piece linking the search for racial justice with patriotism. And I'd urge you to take advantage of that. More to come, I'm sure, from Diane and the NTF on that. The last thing I think that local and regional groups can do is really encourage people to identify and research the Underground Railroad stories in their community. I never fail to be surprised, even though I've been working on this stuff for a quarter of a century, never fail to be surprised by the just phenomenal stories that come out of local histories, antiquarian histories, family traditions. Last year, I had the opportunity to publish nationally a short piece on Native Americans in the Underground Railroad, and it got picked up by Native American listservers and websites, and I started hearing from families who passed this down in their oral, Indian families who passed this down in their oral tradition. There's so much out there that we can gather, research, collect, and tell in a variety of ways. And I'd urge people to be, involved in that through their organizations and individually, and contact the NTF coordinators to discuss future inclusion in the NTF. And you have the link there that's been provided by Diane. So I think it's next back to you, Heather, right?
Yeah, thanks, Roy. Great job. So what we provided, and we can get to you electronically, is the text that we had last year for the governor's proclamation from Maryland. And what we are proposing this year is that the first paragraph of the proclamation should be state specific. So you'll see here that we were putting forward Maryland is the most powerful underground or powerful destination for authentic Underground Railroad history, and in commemoration of all those involved in Underground Railroad, including Maryland's courageous Harriet Tubman and brilliant orator Frederick Douglass and thousands of freedom seekers. So we encourage each of you to think about your state and those specific differentiating stories that you have and put those in that first paragraph of the proclamation text. And then the rest of it can be used and would be, I think, very nice to have all of our states use the rest of it as is, because it pulls together the bigger story. And you can see that we've got in here, you know, we've put in just where to insert your state essentially. So you really can use this template, put this forward. This has been one of the biggest questions we've seen so far coming from states that are already moving forward with this is, do you have a draft text? And yes, we do. And we encourage you to use it and modify it to your state and move that forward. There's also been some questions about how to do this. We are encouraging states to gather together and I think Diane is going to help coordinate that afterwards for those who've attended this. And if you're interested, say, yeah, hey, you know, there's a bunch of us from New York that'd like to get together and do this. Let's get in contact with each other. Then how do you do this? Moving it forward, the paperwork into the states. The best thing to do is contact your local representative, or go right to your governor's website. Often there is just a way to access and submit this kind of material straight through there. But certainly go and get your representative support. Also, coming from a variety of places is going to be more helpful than not. So if you have questions, you're welcome to contact any of us. With that, we'll help you as much as we can. But really, your local representatives are the best place to go if you have questions of how to move this forward in a process. And I think that everyone will receive quite a bit of support to do this. So next slide. And we can get this electronically to you if you need. So we invite everyone to join us this year in making International Underground Railroad Month a national, international event. And this is the Harriet Tubman mural from Cambridge, Maryland, from very close to where Harriet Tubman was born. This is done by a local artist, and it was one of the images that you can see the young lady touching Harriet's hand and joining her to move forward. And we invite all of you to join us. So with that, that's the part of our formal presentation. Diane, if you're ready, we can open the floor to questions.
Thank you, Roy, and thank you, Heather. I guess I neglected to introduce myself at the beginning, but I'm Diane Miller, Program Manager for the Network to Freedom program. We've had a few questions along the way, and most of them had to do with, are the slides or handouts available? And so we can definitely send those. I can send them around to everybody who was on the email list. We are recording this, and as soon as Amanda finishes with the Frederick Douglass speech, she'll get this recording in shape and captioned and everything, and we can make the recording of this session available to people. I think some people have had trouble with the technology, so I apologize for that. We are all still learning. And so if there are any questions, you should be able to see a question and answer panel on the right side of your screen, and you can pose questions there. I see that somebody noted that in North Carolina you need at least 120 days notice to do a proclamation. So I know that we're not going to get every state for sure. And maybe this is something that can be built up for future years. But I think that it's, as Roy said, you don't necessarily need to have a governor's proclamation. It may be that there is a faster process through your legislature or at a county level. But more importantly than the proclamations, I think, are identifying the sites and putting information together to share with people, putting some trip ideas together and sharing out that information. But I'm hoping that this is just the beginning of good things to come.
Yeah, Diane, I think that's really important, and we had certainly talked about that we knew this was going to take longer for some states to get proclamations, or might not happen, certainly as many states are dealing with COVID. But there is no reason, as I came from the museum world and have gone to the tourism world, it's the tour, you make it so, and it is so. And at this point, particularly with the Network to Freedom coming on board with this is a movement. This is a thing. So whether you have an official proclamation happening in your state or not, certainly joining in with the Network to Freedom and participating in International Underground Railroad Month is viable for every single site, whether they have a partner site near them doing it or not. So we certainly encourage everyone just to hop on board with this.
Okay, so I've got a few more questions that are coming in, and I just want to say I don't know how this sound is coming out across the webinar, but if you hear a bird chirping in the background, I apologize, but we're all working from home these days, and that is our parrot named George. So a question, how many are in attendance today? And at the moment we have 110 attendees. We had 230 people sign up in that little Google or that form. I think that we've had trouble with the technology. I've seen a few emails come through that people had trouble getting on, both doing the form and getting on this webinar. So we'll have to take a look at some of those issues for the future. Another question is there a logo for this effort? And that's a good question. I don't think there is a logo for this effort. There's certainly the Network to Freedom logo that I like to see used to join all of these various efforts across the states together. Another question.
Diane, if
yes.
I can interject, this is Roy.
Sure.
If there's no prohibition to using it, that closing slide is a phenomenal logo.
It's an amazing picture, and maybe Heather can say a word about it. This is a mural that's in Cambridge, Maryland, painted by a local artist. And I don't know, we'd have to look into that, but Heather, do you want to say a word or two about this picture?
Yeah, I mean, for a logo, Roy, I would encourage actually any of the Network to Freedom sites that have the ability to use Network to Freedom logo. I would encourage them on this, because again, that pulls together that international group. Certainly moving forward, we could look at a logo. Whether we can use this one or not, I would have to check. We do have copyright, or there is a copyright on this image. I would need to check, and I can let you all know. But I'll let you know. How's that for an answer?
So I had another question about international opportunities, Canada, Mexico, and the Bahamas. The Network to Freedom has tried off and on over the years to work with internationally. Mostly we've worked with Canada and the Bahamas, not as much with Mexico. We recognize that those are important places in the network, in the Underground Railroad historically, and our enabling legislation does direct us to work with these other nations. I've been trying to figure out a way over the years to recognize international sites in some fashion in the network. And we've gotten close a few times, but sort of the political processes make it a little bit difficult. So I am trying now to find some other ways to connect the story. So our GIS intern is doing a story map about a freedom seeker and his journey from Missouri up to Wisconsin into Canada to tell both sides of the story of his life. And I want to do more of that. So I think we can, ahead of any kind of formal connection, we can start developing and telling these stories. I've got some more questions. Are there specific dates in September already set aside along the network for specific events? I don't know that we have anything set, but we can certainly send those along and publicize anything that we come up with. I don't know, Heather or Roy, do you have specific dates you would like to share?
I don't know if Maryland has specific dates linked to Tubman or Douglas that they use for events, but I think the idea is, just as with other months of recognition, Hispanic History Month, Black History Month, Women's History Month, and so forth. The idea is to get a 28 to 31 day period in which people are focused, organizations are focused, sites are highlighting things, programming is taking place, I think what you might highlight in your specific state or locale is if you have an event from history, a fugitive slave rescue, or something that is particular to your Underground Railroad history that you might want to highlight. Otherwise, the idea is really let's make the month a period of focus.
I agree completely with Roy that it really is, let's go for the whole month. And if you have specific dates in your area, you utilize that one date, utilize that date to highlight with your press or your local media. But certainly it's the entire month. Maryland will have more emphasis on September 3rd, which is Frederick Douglass's Self-Emancipation Day, and September 17th, which is Harriet Tubman's Self-Emancipation Day. But we are certainly putting forward the entire month as International Underground Railroad Month.
So I've been getting some more questions. Some of them have to do with developing travel itineraries to sites and maybe a driving travel itinerary for the whole Underground Railroad. I think those are the kinds of things that we would like to try to work on. So I would say reach out to the people in your area or reach out to us at the Network to Freedom, and we can try to connect you with people in your area. If you develop a travel itinerary in your area, you can let us know. I'd like to start publishing or connecting to these things on our website so that we can connect out to all the work that people are doing around the country. So other questions have to do with getting new listings in the Network to Freedom. So we have an application process, and there are 2 deadlines a year, January 15th and July 15th. So we encourage you to contact your regional coordinator to talk about the requirements, to talk about the site or program or facility that you're thinking of, and how it would be best to nominate that site. And they can kind of give you some guidance on how to research those properties and what kind of documentation you would need. So twice a year, we will add new listings to the network, which we are up over 660 members around the country at this point. Sorry, I'm trying to read some of these. We can make all of these questions and answers available as well after the webinar's over. So what states are represented? That is a good question. I would say we have people from all over, mostly the eastern half of the country, but some out in New Mexico and elsewhere. I'll sort of try to tally that up and send some information around about that. There's been questions about how to network with each other after this. So I have to confess that many of you probably realized I neglected to ask what state you're from on that little form. I know many of you, and I can figure out many of you where you're from. But if you are interested in networking with other people from your state, drop me a note and let me know what state you're in, and I will hook you up. There's a question about whether there's any congressional support. We have not approached Congress in support or to support International Underground Railroad Month, and we can't really lobby, so we don't really approach Congress to get them to support us. There are some Congress people that have been supportive of the Network to Freedom and have advocated for additional resources for us. There's a congressman from the Norfolk, Virginia area that has been doing that recently. But really, the way to get congressional support is by people such as you all attending to contact your representatives and ask them to support the program or International Underground Railroad Month. National Parks Conservation Association a number of years ago tried to organize a grassroots movement for people to approach their congressional delegations and ask for support for the network. If there's interest in that sort of thing, drop me a note. But really the most effective thing is for everybody to talk to your own congressperson or people. We've got an offer to hook us up with the UNESCO Slave Route Project. Asked if we are encouraging information on non-Network to Freedom sites and stories. I am certainly realized that there are many sites and stories not in the Network to Freedom. I'd love to see them in the network. This database of sites and local stories that we're building really shows us a whole new understanding of the Underground Railroad. And so I'm always interested in seeing new sites and stories brought to us, but I know we don't have them all. So I would encourage people to consider them, and how we work that in to the network website or any of our materials, I'd have to kind of try to figure out.
And Diane, to help out with that, it's Heather, is certainly to contact if you have multiple sites or have sites in your area that have an Underground Railroad story. I would encourage contacting both your local tourism office as well as your state tourism office, would be my suggestion. And again, you know, it may be a start this year, and you may get more traction next year with some of these stories also. But starting to have areas realize that there's a concentration of stories really helps, and certainly it's part of the education for many people of that the Underground Railroad stories are very much everywhere. And as more and more uncovered and documented, that strengthens. But I would certainly reach out to your local groups also.
So we had another question. Roy, did you have a?
Yeah, I was just going to interject to everyone out there that I think despite all of the pain we're feeling from a whole range of things, swirling around us, the other day somebody was saying, what additional horseman of the apocalypse is going to come forward, besides COVID and racial protests and a whole range of things. But the timing, it seems to me, is incredibly good for this effort. I know with my students, with congressmen, state legislators, and others that I hear on TV, journalists and the media generally, we have been pushed nationally, locally, towards a focus on questions of racial justice. And the Underground Railroad is a key part of that story and a key part of sustaining or even opening that conversation for some people. It's one of the foremost models in our history. While we're seeing people take down Confederate statues, somebody suggested, what are the things that we're going to replace them with? What are the images that we're going to replace them with? And I think one of the images, whether it be just conversationally or in actual, things like the Harriet Tubman mural that we just saw, one of the things that enters into the national conversation is how can we highlight the part of American history that is the search for racial justice. Fergus Bordovich, who's one of the leading scholars of the writers about the Underground Railroad, calls it America's first civil rights movement. It's a model because it's multiracial. It's casting all sorts of other considerations to the side to help people achieve freedom. And it ultimately is one of the things that helps bring down the institution of slavery. And so I'd say the timing is right. People are open to this conversation. I've had two college students in the last week who said, I want to major in history. I'm an engineering student, but in the one case of somebody I got heard from yesterday, I'm an engineering student, but I recognize because the national conversation we're in, just how important this stuff is. And so I think the timing is right. We need to take advantage of it. People are looking for a way to engage in this national conversation on racial justice. So we're going to give them something.
I had a couple more questions I wanted to bring up. One is someone works for a park system with several individual historic sites. Some are on the network and some are not. Do we have literature that they can share with those sites that are not listed to inform them about International Underground Railroad Month? So that's a really good point, and we do have a little bit of material that we could share about the Network to Freedom itself that could be shared with those sites that are not listed. But maybe Heather can fill us in. It might be useful to have a flyer of some sort about this effort.
Yeah, what I'm using and encourage all to use is really the email and that Diane sent out initially, inviting everyone to this webinar. It had, what is International Underground Railroad Month on it. It had the goals of it, and it has the some of the ways you can participate. Also with the slides here, I am taking that material and putting it to the fact sheet is what I'm doing on our side. So in many ways, and then if you want to add your own contact information, your own stories to that, or anything else you'd like to put that as addition. But in many ways, I think you've got a great framework to start with what's provided right here.
There's another question that I want to bring up. The question is, how broadly does the Network to Freedom define what qualifies as a site of freedom seeking and or a site of the Underground Railroad? For example, would a GAR building built in the early 1900s by African American veterans of the Civil War qualify? Or would a building from which we know at least one enslaved person escaped, but which was not part of the Underground Railroad itself qualify? So this could be a topic for a whole other webinar. And if anybody is interested in us doing any further events like this, drop us a note. But the way that the Network to Freedom program interprets the Underground Railroad is that it is a resistance movement focused around escape and flight. And we are interested in telling the stories of those freedom seekers who took those perilous journeys, as well as the people that helped them. So if we're centering the story around the freedom seekers, places that they escaped from are part of their story. Routes that they took along the way, places where they were sheltered, churches that might have, the congregation might have helped them, places where there were confrontations like kidnappings or rescues, all of those are part of the story. We also look to tell what kind of life do people create in freedom. So we look at destinations of where people ended up. And so if the GAR building was built by the African American veterans, the key question would be, can we identify any of those people who might have escaped from slavery, who might have gotten their freedom through escaping? So that would be kind of the key component there. But this certainly brings up a whole other line of discussion. Like I said, if anybody is interested in us doing additional webinars on that sort of thing, drop us a note and we'd be glad to try to set that up. Okay. Well, we have used about 47 minutes according to my computer. I think that I've gotten to many of the questions. If there's a question that I've missed, we will go and answer that directly individually. But we'll also put out the slides as well as maybe a summary of some of the recurring questions. And I will try to work to network people from the various states together. And the regional coordinators would probably be involved in that. So if you are interested in working with others in your state, please drop me a note to let me know, and we will get people in touch with each other.
And Diane, why don't you give your contact information? I just realized I should have done a contact slide at the end here.
That's a good point. So my contact information is Diane_Miller@nps.gov. Heather, do you want to give yours, and then Roy?
Sure, mine is Heather.Ersts, which is ER, S as in Sam, T as in Tom, S as in Sam, @maryland.gov.
And mine is FINKENR@udmercy.edu.
Diane, you want to take us out?
Yep, sorry, I was muted. I did put those emails down in the chat section. So I would thank everybody for listening and being interested in the Underground Railroad and telling this history. And I especially thank Heather and Roy for working with me to spread the word about this and for encouraging us to get it started to begin with. And I thank this Network to Freedom staff for all of their work with people out in the communities, and Dave for helping with posting some of the information from this discussion. So we will be in touch with everybody send the slides around, and you can certainly email and call us if you want to talk further, and we'll be glad to help you network together. So on that note, I think I will end our discussion. Thank you all again, and have a good rest of the day and a good 4th of July holiday. I will say one thing. Roy mentioned the community reading of Douglas's speech. If you go to the network or the Underground Railroad website, nps.gov/UGRR, you will find that posted on July 4th. So happy July 4th, and everybody stay safe and stay healthy.
Good luck going forward.
Thanks, everyone.